Hi, I'm Dr. Michelle Neidleman of Treble Health, and today I want to share a few of my most recent patient success stories. I hope that you find these just as inspiring as I have, having worked with these patients. It really is incredible to see just how much they've improved in the matter of months. I hope that some of the tools and techniques that they utilized are things that you'll be able to use and incorporate so that one day you too will be a success story. So, we're going to be covering 3 different patient success stories. I'm going to go over a little bit of their background. I'm going to also discuss the tools and techniques that we used, and we're going to be reviewing their Tinnitus Functional Index scores, or TFI scores. The Tinnitus Functional Index is a questionnaire that's commonly used to gauge just how much tinnitus is impacting someone on different subscales. So it helps us have an idea of just how much tinnitus is a problem for this individual. They receive an overall score that helps categorize them into tinnitus either being no problem, tinnitus being a small problem, tinnitus being a moderate problem, tinnitus being a big problem, or tinnitus being a very big problem. And we like to use these scores at Treble Health as pre and post measures. We use them to see where someone is starting and to help us identify what areas we need to focus on. And we also use it throughout the counseling process to identify where we need to add in tools. So for example, if they're having difficulty sleeping, we need to focus on developing a set of techniques that help them improve their sleep. And then we like to use these as a post measure to see just how much someone has improved. We oftentimes will graduate our patients once they have reached a category that puts them in or very close to stage 4 of habituation, which means that they either no longer hear their tinnitus, or if they do, it's about less than 10% of their day, and the moments are very quick and fleeting, and they're able to feel much more in control and not feeling emotionally upset or disturbed by their tinnitus anymore. So we try to work with patients, and we like to see these patient scores obviously drop, and we are going to be discussing some of those scores in these patient success stories. So in these patient success stories, we're going to be discussing their background, as well as the tools and techniques that they use to help improve their tinnitus. And then I'm going to give you their Tinnitus Functional Index scores, pre-treatment and post-treatment. The first patient success story that I'm going to introduce is an individual who was in their early 60s, and they noted having tinnitus for about 15 years. They actually got it after they had open heart surgery, and it wasn't at a level that was really bothersome to them. They did hear it, and that was okay with them. But after they got a COVID booster shot a couple of years ago, their tinnitus started to reach levels that were louder, and they were a little bit more constant and persistent, so it started to affect them. It really affected them when they were trying to watch TV or if they were on their computer. They found that when they were busy, if they were outside with friends or golfing, they really didn't hear their tinnitus, but it was in the activities that they often did at home where the tinnitus was most problematic. And they felt like they couldn't really be at home and they couldn't really relax at home. So they had actually gotten hearing aids on their own from a local audiologist before they came to see me at Treble Health. But they did have sound therapy programmed in their devices. It just wasn't set at the appropriate level. So together we worked on fine-tuning how loud the sound therapy had to be to help them habituate to their tinnitus, and they went back to their local audiologist to have them reprogram the masking noise. So ideally, the masking noise should be at a level that's slightly below your tinnitus volume so that the two sounds are blending and mixing together. We don't want it to be equal to the volume of your tinnitus or louder than that. That doesn't help habituation. So we had their sound therapy fine-tuned. We also worked on trying to develop an environment that was similar to them being outside, inside their home. So when we're outside, there's a lot of conditions and factors that we can't control. We're not able to predict when sounds are going to happen, if someone's going to start talking to us, if something is about to enter our field of vision. So watching TV and being on the computer can be pretty boring activities, not very stimulating. So we had to incorporate sound therapy, but not just through their hearing aids, but also through something that was like a sound machine, a speaker that they had beside them while they were watching TV or in their office when they were on the computer. So we were trying to create a more diverse and complex listening environment that would help grab their brain's attention. We also discussed the fact that our brains can only really focus on one sensory input at a time. So if they were eating something, or if they were also watching, let's say, a sporting event while they were on their computer doing some work, they would have more things to keep their attention on and help keep the attention off of their tinnitus. We also had to work on some thought restructuring. So they were really annoyed by their tinnitus, and they were also really fixated on why it happened. And so we had to talk through the fact that at this point in time, it doesn't really matter why their tinnitus happened, because even if we could pinpoint it exactly to, let's say, the COVID booster or their heart procedure, we can't go back in time to change that and therefore change today's outcome. But we can change how we're feeling and thinking and doing today. So focusing on mindfulness, adding in more meditation, helping them redirect their focus and attention off of tinnitus and onto something that was more positive and neutral really helped them. And I also think it was having them highlight how much of their day their tinnitus didn't impact, so that they could see that the degree to which tinnitus was bothersome was really a small portion of their day. And in time, they started to be able to watch TV again and be on the computer and not hear their tinnitus. I think it was also really important that they set goals early in treatment. So they told me that they wanted to be able to be on their computer and watch TV and not have their tinnitus impair them or take away all of their attention while they were doing those activities. And so we not only added strategies that could help them in those settings, but they were able to see that in time, they were able to get back to watching TV and being on the computer, and they didn't notice their tinnitus. So having set that goal helped them really identify that they were progressing and they were habituating and they were succeeding at this recovery process. Their tinnitus functional index score when we first started working back in March was a 68. And a score of 68 puts them in the category of tinnitus being a big problem. By the end of the summer, when we stopped working together, their score was a 6. And that put them now in the category of tinnitus not being a problem. And they took the questionnaire once again a couple months later in September, and their score had dropped even further. So now it was like a 5. So you could see that the results are really holding. They are really doing better, and these strategies have really helped them. Something that I forgot to mention that I think was also important was that they didn't really want to wear their hearing aids and maskers when we first got together. And I had to really counsel him on the importance of wearing them consistently, and that eventually, as they started to habituate, they could start to pick and choose when they were going to wear them. And eventually they got to the point after, like I said, from March to August, where they didn't have to really use their maskers any longer. And they really didn't have hearing loss, so they didn't need to keep using them for hearing purposes. So they were able to not only see the goals of being able to get back to watching TV and television without having tinnitus interrupt them and interfere with it, but they also were able to see that they didn't want to rely heavily on the maskers. And at the end of the time that we worked together, they really weren't using them, and they were doing really well. And they know that they have them in the event that they need them in the future for hearing loss. So to summarize, I think it's really important to know what parts of your life tinnitus is impacting you and set those as goals that you want to accomplish to be able to have tinnitus not affect your ability to do X, Y, Z, rather than focusing on just not hearing tinnitus altogether. It's more helpful to set a realistic goal and a more specific goal like that. My second patient success story is an individual who was in their mid-40s. They describe themselves as someone who had lifelong tinnitus. They remember having tinnitus as a child. They are a musician. They also like to DJ. And their tinnitus started after they went to a music event where they forgot to wear hearing protection. And following that event, their tinnitus really increased to a level that was disruptive. They felt extreme guilt because they left their family to go to this event and then forgot to wear their earplugs and now was left with tinnitus that they felt was debilitating to them. To give a little bit of backstory, this individual is the primary breadwinner in their family, and they have some individuals in their family with health conditions that they're responsible for taking care of and managing. So they have a heavy burden on them, and they have this immense guilt that they did something for themselves that ended up harming them and also is now impacting their ability to care for their family. So they got maskers from us, and we right away started using sound therapy, set the levels appropriately. We also focused a lot on the use of proper hearing protection. And one of the main things with this patient was trying to rebuild their confidence to play music again or attend music events, because music had been such an important part of their life that they had let go of after this happened. And their tinnitus started at the end of last year, but we started meeting together in March of this year. And so they had tried dealing with it on their own and weren't having any success. And that was when they finally reached out to Treble Health for some support, got maskers from us in March. And like I said, we started right away with the sound therapy plan. We talked about hearing protection, and we started working on thought restructuring. Because of their immense guilt, they also felt an immense fear of worsening their tinnitus if they were to play music again. But not only was music something that they did for enjoyment, it was also something that they did for financial reasons. So not only was music a really big part of their life for enjoyment, it was also something that they would do on occasion to earn money. And I really worked with them to try to get them to slowly get back to playing music, rebuilding their confidence that as long as they're using proper hearing protection, they're going to be fine. They're not going to have any further repercussions or regressions to their tinnitus. And little by little, they started to play music again, see that there wasn't anything happening. They got the courage to actually play music at an event, and again, didn't have anything happen from that. But I think what really helped solidify their progress and boost up their confidence was that they went on vacation and they did not have tinnitus while they were on vacation. They came back and told me, I hadn't heard my tinnitus while I was on vacation, and since being home for a few days, I started to hear it a little bit, but it's much softer than it was. Having that experience where their tinnitus was pretty much gone helped them realize that habituation was 100% possible. If they were able to not hear their tinnitus and not think about it while on vacation, they should be able to have that same experience while at home. And then shortly after that, they had another gig where they went to play and they had no changes to their tinnitus. And little by little, they just started to have more breaks in their tinnitus. They had like many more good days, and the fluctuations to their tinnitus were getting fewer and far between. We also had to discuss that their levels of stress and anxiety were heavily tied in with their tinnitus. They started to recognize that if they were feeling stress and anxiety about something completely unrelated to their tinnitus started to increase. So we worked on trying to break that connection down. They had to start really identifying the source of their anxiety and stress and recognizing that it has nothing to do with tinnitus and it has everything to do with, let's say, an unexpected bill in the mail, and therefore tinnitus has no role in that stress and doesn't need to be brought to their attention or focus. And little by little over time, they started to see that they could feel stress and anxiety because of other reasons, and their tinnitus wasn't actually reacting or changing because of it. So their confidence boost really helped them to progress further and further to stage 4 of habituation, and it was really evident in their tinnitus functional index scores. So in March, when we started working, their score was a 63, which put them in the realm of tinnitus being a big problem. And then by the time that we kind of stopped working together at the end of the summer, their score was down to a 15. And that was in the category of tinnitus no longer being a problem. I want to stress that having a TFI score in the no problem category doesn't mean that you no longer hear tinnitus at all. It just means that it's no longer impairing you and you no longer view it as a problem. And stage 4 of habituation, which really coincides with being in the no problem category on the TFI, also doesn't mean that you just never hear tinnitus again. For some individuals, that does happen, but for the majority, it's that the moments that you hear your tinnitus are few and far between, and they're very fleeting. So almost as soon as you hear and think about your tinnitus, it has already disappeared and you're on to the next thing. So having a goal of just not having tinnitus be a problem, not affect you, having it be very minimal, I think is a more realistic and accurate representation of what we as audiologists here at Treble Health try to do. And if you come in expecting to just never hear your tinnitus again and only having that be your goal, it will make it a lot harder for you to be like one of these patients who has experienced success in their life. The third and final patient success story is a patient who was in their early 30s and they never had tinnitus prior to going to 2 loud parties within a matter of weeks. They went in and had the full audiological and medical workup and found that they had some slight hearing loss, but their local audiologist who did their hearing test, as well as myself and the ENT that they had seen, felt that the hearing loss was probably already there before these events that brought on their tinnitus. It was just a risk factor that maybe made them more predisposed to getting tinnitus from being in a very loud environment. So after tinnitus, they started having some trouble sleeping as well, and they were really fixated on tinnitus. They were very worried about what this meant for them. They felt like it was going to be lifelong, and they were scared that they wouldn't be able to go back out with friends to loud bars or clubs, that they wouldn't be able to go to bachelor or bachelorette parties or go to weddings. So we really had to work on restructuring their thoughts to ones that were more realistic, helping focus on what is a dangerous loud environment and what is just a loud environment that's not likely to do any harm or permanent damage to one's hearing. They were using earplugs, and so there was a lot of counseling about not overusing earplugs and only really using them when appropriate or using them when you're starting to feel anxious about the environment that you're in. We also had to focus on planning what they were going to do if they were going to go to a setting where there was going to be loud sounds, what they were going to do if they started to really hear their tinnitus or really worry about what was going to happen because they were there. So having a plan of action, meaning they were going to try to go to the setting without their earplugs in initially. Just have them in their pocket, waiting there if they need to use them because they're feeling anxious. Knowing that they can just leave. There's no reason to be in a situation that you don't feel comfortable. So leaving is always an option. We also discussed acoustics, meaning that you can reposition where you are in a space that will help reduce the amount of sounds that are reaching you. So, for example, going behind a wall, moving in a different direction from where the sound source is, keeping your back towards the sound source. All of these things can help reduce the sounds that are actually reaching your ears. And with them having these plans of what they could do, it really helped build up their confidence again that they could go back out and start to go to these life events, things that they would have never given it a second thought about going before they started to have tinnitus. We also had to incorporate sound therapy. So they were using maskers with sound therapy, and we had them set at levels that were really appropriate. For them, it was a little bit harder to find a sound that they liked. So they did spend a lot of time going through the different sounds that the maskers had inside of them, but also looking at sounds that different apps have. And eventually they were able to find a sound that they liked and that they were able to ignore. We also had to spend a lot of time focusing on fluctuations to tinnitus, because when they would experience a change to their tinnitus, they were really fearful that now this meant that their tinnitus jumped to a new level and that these were representations of regressions and that they weren't really improving. So I discussed the fact that fluctuations to tinnitus are completely normal and a part of the recovery process for everyone. As they're going through the different stages of habituation, it is normal to experience fluctuations. The fluctuations are basically jumping points to help get you to a point where tinnitus is no longer an issue. And the fluctuations happen for a number of reasons. Part of habituation means learning to ignore, forget, and not care about tinnitus any longer. But one of the main functions of our brain is to help remind us of things that we do think of as important. So it's kind of going through this tug of war, so to speak, where you for some time have thought tinnitus was really important. It was a problem that you wanted to focus on, but now you're trying to defocus on it and deprioritize it. And your brain is just doing these check-ins with you every once in a while, and that's when you'll have maybe a not so good day with tinnitus versus having had a good day the day before. So talking about these fluctuations and regressions help them, and having them experience that fluctuation to their tinnitus and recognizing that, oh, it did come back to its previous level, built up their confidence that they are progressing and improving rather than regressing. It also helped them feel more in control of what was happening because they felt like they were doing all the right things. They were meditating, they were actively doing breathing exercises throughout their workday, and yet they were experiencing these fluctuations at times where their tinnitus was much louder. So overall, understanding more about what was happening, why this was happening, helped take away the fear element and help them to start to view tinnitus in a different light. We also started to focus again on creating micro goals, smaller goals for themselves. They had a goal of being able to go back out to a bar with friends and not have a change to their tinnitus. So when they started to set these smaller goals for themselves and noticed that they were succeeding and they had these victories, it helped make them feel and see that they actually were progressing and that habituation was in their future. We worked together for a period of several months. We started working together back in January, where their tinnitus functional index score was a 74, putting them in the category of tinnitus being a very big problem. At the end of the summer, their most recent tinnitus functional index score was an 8, which put them well in the category of tinnitus no longer being a problem. I remember them telling me, I realize now I'm really not bothered by my tinnitus. Even if I hear it, it's like a thought that passes through my mind. And I'm not fixated on it the way I was previously. And I'm not worried about it because I see that I was able to overcome it. And I know that if it were to happen again, I would just have to use those same strategies and techniques and that I would be fine. So I hope that you enjoyed hearing these 3 different patient success stories and that you have felt inspired to maybe add in some of these tools and techniques into your everyday so that you can eventually reach a level where tinnitus is no longer a problem or intruding in your everyday life. And if you would like some extra support, that's what we're here for here at Treble Health. You can always call and schedule a consultation or just click the link to schedule a consultation to meet with someone on our team. If you have any other questions or comments, please feel free to comment below. And if you haven't already subscribed to our channel, please hit subscribe now. Thank you so much for listening.